Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am super excited to have you all for this next episode with us on reigning and ruling. I have somebody that's very special to me. And y'all know I say that every time, but I say it because it's true. And y'all just know I don't bring anybody to y'all. Coach Kim is my girl. She can be y'all girl too, but she mine first. I'm gonna get into your bio and then we're gonna get into our chit chat. That's okay with you?
All right with me.
Okay. Kim Christopher is a career strategist with the Benovian Group. A former HR practitioner, she is an ICF certified accredited career coach with an MBA in HR management. You have to pay attention to that. She contributes to the workplace, related podcasts, publications, and offer guidance to clients related to holistic alignment, career satisfaction, salary negotiation, and like I told y'all earlier, she is my girl. She has helped me in my career. She has helped me get more strategic as it relates to my salary negotiation. And she has helped my husband. So I'm not just telling y'all this because I just know her off IG. I'm telling y'all this because I've experienced the work that she does, and it is impeccable. I wouldn't have the banking career without her. Coach Kim.
Thank you. Hello. Well,
Have
so good to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and offer some notes to all your listeners.
So your video was one of the most watched video from last year. Anytime I send your video on interviewing strategies to people that are looking to just figure out what's the best way to interview, I send them your video and it's always good feedback. They always take away good insight. So it made sense to bring you back to just drop some more jewels in our crowns because you have been helping people reign and rule.
Good. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. People, I think everyone, I think there's always an appetite to interview better. How do I do this better? And so I'm really glad that that last year's episode was so popular and so helpful.
I'm thankful for your yes, honey. I'm thankful for your yes. So this time, last year we talked about effective interviewing strategies. This time I wanted to take it up a notch because a lot has been going on in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. We've had civil unrest. We've experienced George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. The list goes on and on. Last year, a lot of companies was like, hey, I'm going to make this commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as a job seeker, how do we discern if they lived up to those public statements?
That's a great question, and I want to preface my responses by saying this, and keep this in mind as we're talking about this topic throughout the night. Um, Work is like any relationship, right? You've got the other party showing you with it how interested they are in you, um, and you also have a sense of how you feel about it. So there's a quantitative aspect, which really includes the things that they do, the things that are tangible that you can see them doing, how they pay attention to your needs, and then how you feel about it with sort of a qualitative experience. The same thing happens at work, especially around topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Companies can have a goal. We want 35% of our executives to be diverse,
Mm,
within 5 years. That's a quantitative goal. Qualitatively, though, um, companies may say we want our employees to feel included. We want to create the environment, right, that feels nurturing and inclusive. So the best DE&I strategies have components of both qualitative and quantitative. So having said that, I'll be honest with you. I was doing some research about this topic, and I saw a lot of chatter come up about it in May. It's been about a year since George Floyd's murder, by a police officer in Minneapolis, and everyone's commitment to D&I. How have we been doing? How's that been going? And I'll tell you, the reviews have been mixed. Here's what I have read and seen, that a lot of companies have been creating employee resource groups. So ERG, employee resource groups are basically, it's sort of a niche group. It's supposed to be a group led by employees, co-led by an executive sponsor that really speak to the specific needs of that group. So you may have Hispanic employees, you may have a Black employee, um, you know, employee ERG, employee resource group. So I've seen a lot of companies commit to diversity, equity, inclusion conversations anyway, by creating these employee resource groups with well-established, well-defined, clear mission statements, executive sponsorship, and active participation from employees. So that's one thing I've seen. And then I've also seen that other companies and organizations have been willing to have difficult conversations, having these courageous conversations, really talking about race, asking employees, how do you feel about working here as a person of color? And so behind the scenes, that's kind of what's been going on. I'll tell you this: you don't really know how it is until you get behind
The
the
scene.
curtain, right? And I've got some questions that we can, interview questions that we can unpack and people can ask. Um, until you really get behind the scenes, you don't really ever know how the diversity, equity, and inclusion, um, philosophy is working. There are questions that we can ask, certainly, but you just don't ever know until
It's
you get.
just hard. It's hard to discern it off
It's
front from the outside looking in.
it is. Here's the thing. What we can do, and I think I talked about Ben and Jerry's a lot last year. What we can certainly do: check the social media accounts, right?
Yeah.
Check their website, check their social media accounts. What are they saying about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Are they transparent about their stance on the matter? You can even check their LinkedIn, Glassdoor, other sites for employee feedback. I know certainly since last May, I think institutions, higher learning, corporations, nonprofits, organizations that employ people have really been feeling some heat about, okay, we need to figure out what our strategy is going to be, and we need to be a little bit more transparent about it.
Correct.
So certainly go out there, go to the website, go to the social media accounts, Twitter, any sort of social media account, even check out LinkedIn. And if you can, talk to other employees, really
That's
ask,
in the organization.
absolutely, what's really happening on the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and how are you feeling about it? Can you, yeah.
So, how would you define diversity, equity, and inclusion? Because people say, oh, DEI, but those are really three different things. They're like an umbrella. It holds up the overall. So, what is diversity? What is equity? And what is inclusion?
Great question. So diversity includes all the ways that people differ. Diversity is what makes us different. Equity is fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while trying to eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. That's equity. And then inclusion is the act of creating environments in which any individual or any group can feel welcomed, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate. And so all those things together, refer, so D&I refers to all the efforts an institution takes to create a more welcoming environment for people who have historically been marginalized. So you're absolutely right. They're three distinct things. And ideally, your strategy, a solid DE&I strategy, recognizes those three distinct things, but also is good about creating an overarching strategic plan to accomplish that and their goals.
Right, because you can have diversity but lack equity and inclusion, and it's
Absolutely.
pretty. And that's what I think I've struggled with. I've always seen the diversity up to a certain point,
Right.
and there was no equity and no inclusion. But we're putting on for LinkedIn and we're putting on for the gram, and it's like, oh, we're this and we're that. It's like, actually, you're not. Your culture actually sucks.
Yeah. Yep. We'll talk about culture too, because culture is everything. You're exactly right. I see this often, where there's certain customer service groups are typically, I shouldn't say typically, but I've seen lots of diversity, lots of diverse employees working customer service. But when I look at the leadership of customer service, right?
Yeah.
I don't see any. I see you hire a customer service rep who is an African American female or male. But when I look at the leaders of that team lead, if I look at the manager, supervisor, manager, director, none of that population is diverse. So.
Right. And I think that's why I started up. So when I was looking for my next opportunity, I looked who was sitting by the CEO in the C-suite, and I worked my way down because
Mm,
I noticed that working my way up, I only saw people that looked like me up to a certain point. And
mhm,
then I started figuring out the organization chart to say, okay, who sits at this level and how do I compare and what's what do they look like? Do I
right,
see me at all levels? And
right.
that was a determining factor in whether I took a job or not. When we were at the offer table, she asked me, why did you select them over us? And I said, it's because I saw me at all levels.
Mm.
And the one person that I did see at this company at the highest level, he was leaving next week. So that means it's just gonna be me? No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm not trying to be a sacrificial lamb. God has already brought that for me. No, thank you. So I was not trying to do that, but I think I'm glad you brought that up because that could be another strategy that people could use when they're looking who looks like me and where are they on the totem pole. And
Yep.
to really incorporate that in your strategy instead of just saying, well, everybody that's in my role look like me. So that means that's a representation of the whole company when it could not be the case.
Right.
So I want to transition into some interview questions because this is where all the tea happens.
All of it. Okay.
So I'm excited about this part. What are some interview questions we could ask about diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay. Great question. So let's preface the answers by remembering that DE&I, a solid DE&I strategy should contain quantitative and qualitative metrics or aspects, right? That's one. The other thing that to remember is work culture is everything. The late Peter Drucker, who was a celebrated management guru, said culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have a strategy, but at the end of the day, your work culture rules. So what is culture? Work culture. Work culture is a collection of attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that make up the regular atmosphere at work. It's the stuff that happens on a daily basis. People don't even really think about it. It shows up most times. I've seen it. It shows up as not being consistent in who is held accountable. The low levels of accountability sometimes, especially when it comes to leaders. So culture is steeped in tradition. We have always done it this way. This is just how we do it, right? Lots of politics sometimes, lots of secret processes. You walk in and there's an announcement about someone being promoted or selected for a position. You're thinking, wait a minute, there was a position. I didn't know about this position. I want to go apply. You don't know. And then the one thing I love to hear, and I really hate to hear it, but the one thing when I hear the F word, when people say, "Oh, we are like family here," run. Do you know how much mess and drama we cover up in our family? You know how much dysfunction, we'll call them dynamics. You know how many dynamics exist in our own families, and we cover. That's just how Uncle so and so is. That's just how they are. If we're at work, I want this to be based on my performance metrics, not about family, right? So we get in, so all those things that work culture is so powerful. So remember that when we talk about interview questions, okay? So now I'll give you some questions to ask, and then toward the end I'm going to give you sort of the 4Ps paradigm. So one, if you're talking to an interviewer and a member of HR, recruiter, hiring manager, ask, are the DE&I efforts being led top down or bottom up? So who was leading that diversity, the DE&I efforts, and what position is that? Is there a a C-suite position? Is that a director? Is that a manager? Because ultimately, if it's not coming from a senior level position, it will likely not stick, right? Um, and also, how long has that DE&I office been in existence? Did you just create this June 15th, 2020? And if you have, let's really talk about that. That could be the case, but try to gauge if who's leading those DE&I efforts at the company and how long that position or DE&I office has been around.
Okay.
And then number two, I have a technique that you can apply really to any topic that you want to drill in and dig on. It's the 4Ps paradigm. 4Ps stand for policy, practice, proof, and perception. So policy. So ask, what are some policies that exist that reflect your organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are your policies? If it's not a policy, it's really hard for employees to follow. It's really hard to say that you stand behind DE&I when you don't really have, or even you stand behind no retaliation, right? It's hard to say that that you stand behind those efforts if you don't have a policy. So what's your policy? If they say we don't have a policy, okay, well, tell me about your practice, right? How does your company's culture reflect your commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? How does this show up on a daily basis, right? If you don't have anything codified in the policy, what happens day to day? What's your practice? And then proof. Give me some proof. That third P is proof.
So that's the receipt. I need to see this.
See the receipts. I want to understand what the receipts are. What tangible evidence do you have that your DE&I efforts are working? Tell me about the wins you have seen as a result of your DE&I efforts, right? And they ought to be able to provide quantitative receipts or qualitative receipts, whether it's things like, one of our DE&I goals is to see 20% diversity, 20% diverse slate in all of our executive leadership positions by the year 2025. Very specific goal, right? It's quantified. And if they can say that's our goal, and against that goal, we were able to push it to 1%. At least there's some progress, right? But if they can't articulate that might be a problem. Qualitatively, they can at least say, what, we recognize that our employees have a lot of frustration and anger, and they just need to share it. So once a month, we do a roundtable discussion, and we allow employees to really air their concerns. We have courageous conversations. We also listen for things like, we've implemented a culture survey. We're doing pulse checks on a yearly basis, or even every 6 months. We've got some areas that we just really need to understand how our employees are thinking and feeling about diversity and working for us. So listen for a balance of the quantitative and the qualitative. All right, so that's 3 Ps. We've got policy, practice, proof, and number 4 is perception. And this perception really goes back to it's how you feel. So how do your employees feel about the DE&I efforts? How does it feel? And ask the recruiter or the HR manager, HR person, or even the hiring manager, how do you feel about the DE&I efforts that you've seen? Ask how people feel about it, right? So those are some of the things that I can recommend. And you'd be surprised the kind of information you get when you ask very direct questions like that. And then it also allows you to dig in and ask follow-up questions, right? So listen for a focus on, we're hiring, X diverse candidates, X%, but tell me about the promotion. What's the rate of promotion right, for your diverse employees? Do we have a concentration of diverse employees within one functional area? Are they all in customer service? Are they all driving the bus in your particular operation? Are they all doing one particular job? Um, and so you can start to get some information and really dig in and figure out what's important to you, you know, and determine where you want to ask follow-up questions. For questions like D&I strategy, your recruiter may not have all the information that you're looking for, and that's okay. The recruiter can say, you know, I'm not sure. I'd like to find out and let you know.
Right, right.
Um, and then I also like to ask these same questions of a few different people. You may get a very different perspective, especially if you have someone who looks like you during the interviewing process. Ask them. So, you
So
know,
as you progress throughout the interviewing process, you can ask these 4 P's to different people, and that'll give you a holistic perspective on the policies, the practice, the proof, and the perception.
it should give you some information to work with. Like we said, it's so you don't always know until you get behind the door, but you can have an indication if you're getting solid answers, honest answers that sound honest. That's a good thing. If companies say, you know, listen, we've struggled, we are terrible. As I look at our leadership, as I look at our population, we've not done a good job at DEI. However, we are committed to changing that. If they can tell you that, all right, you know what, I can respect that, right?
Okay.
But absolutely, asking these 4 Ps should give you a little bit more information, some details that you can then pull together and then try to create a fuller picture.
I love those.
Thank you.
As you were talking, I wrote them down, and I also was thinking about the ways that I may have asked this in a different way, but I was able to think about the way that my organization has the policy, the practice, the proof, and the perception, as opposed to other organizations that I've worked for. So I could appreciate this because it's way more streamlined and it's straight to the point. It's not disrespectful, it's not snooty, but it allows you as the candidate to get the information you need to determine whether or not you really want to be a part of this organization.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, you know, D&I used to be such a taboo thing to ask about, to ask about during the interview. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think companies need to really need to expect questions about DE&I. And so,
Right. I agree wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly. Because well, for me, I just made up my mind that I know what type of organization I want to be with, and I need to have answers before I get in the door. Because if I can't feel you in the interview process, then I don't want to try it out. And I'm
right,
working there 40 hours a week. It's a no for me.
right, or it's a very toxic place, and it causes you, you know, trauma and you know PTSD. You don't want that either.
No, we don't want that at all. We trying to live.
Yeah.
We trying to live, reign, rule, and be crowned, and all those things. All those things. So I have to ask you. I ask everyone this question, whatever is specific to their specific area of expertise. But how do you reign and rule in your career and in life?
Hmm. You know, the first part of reigning and ruling for me is, and we touched on this a bit last year, it was when I realized I did not have the feels about my HR career that I needed to have. I needed to feel a certain way about my work. I need to feel my work and feel like it's doing what it needs to do for me. You know, not everybody says that. I come from a place of logic, but I also have to feel good about it. Like, how do I feel about it?
Yeah.
And it wasn't working for me. And so I really had to be honest. I had to get honest and say, okay, this isn't working. Let's figure out the components that do work and build upon that. So the first step, before I could reign and rule, I had to be honest with myself. I had to sit myself down and say, okay, let's take inventory. Because something is off. Something is off. Let's dig into what is off and try to create a plan that works. So I had to be honest. So that self-discovery piece, so important.
I agree wholeheartedly. That is so important. If you cannot look within, if you cannot look within yourself to figure out what's going on, That's problematic.
Huge problem, huge problem. And then the next step was to, once I decided the work I wanted to do and what's my mission statement, a personal mission statement that I can apply to career, I can apply to personal life, then I had to be intentional. So if any opportunity that came my way, if it did not align with what I wanted to do, I could politely decline. Now, you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, Kim, Christopher, I can't do that at work. I have a manager who tells me I got to get this work done. I get it. And here's what we do. We have an assignment that you may not feel like it aligns, but this is what we do. We complete the project with excellence. Okay. And then you still have a chat with your manager, or you send an email with those outputs that was, the outputs that were asked of you, and say, I learned a lot from this project. I'm really excited about doing work that fill in the blank, work that exposes me to the financial side of the business, or work. I'm excited about learning how our training team develops and delivers content. Will you keep me in mind when those projects arise?
Right.
Or do you have time to further discuss the kinds of projects that align with some of my interests? So you're doing the work. That's what we have to do, right? We have to perform as we are expected to.
Correct.
And then we keep it on our manager's minds. We keep it top of mind that, hey, I have some interest in some other projects, stretch assignments, what have you. Let's talk about how I can nurture that. And then also being open, being hungry enough to really search, to be proactive and search out the kinds of work, people, projects, networking opportunities that really do align with what you want to do or what you're doing now.
Right.
So being intentional is important. And then I check in with myself on a regular basis. I have a sort of twice a year, I have a mid-year, I have a check-in. I check in with myself. I set goals for the beginning of the year. Then I check in with myself in July and just, how's it going? How are we doing? How are we progressing against the goals? How are you feeling about the goals that you set? Are these goals still germane? I do this. This is the HR person in me.
But I think that's important, and that's something people should do. Like, you should check in with yourself to see, how is this going? Am I in alignment with the assignment that God has for me? I absolutely love that. And please, y'all, have a personal mission statement.
Yes. Because I think, for me, it came up very organically. When I thought to myself, okay, what do I want to do? What is it that I really take away? Job title, take away money earned, take away perks. What is the stuff that I want to do? And I just was, I think I had written like 25 statements. I was like, too long, shorter. And I had to get down to the essence of what drives me. And once you get to that essence, you're golden. And it's easier then to be intentional and stay within alignment. But it's not always an easy process to get to the center like that. So I check in with myself just to make sure things are going as planned. And how do I get things back on track if they've come off track? And then and the cycle repeats. I'm honest with myself. Okay, let's see. How is this working? Where should I tighten up, right? How do I get more discipline in this area? Does that mean my bedtime needs to be reexamined, right? Does that mean that I need to less Netflix and chilling? What am I doing?
Those bedtimes be so real.
And so it's a never-ending process, but it starts with being honest, and then it's followed by my being intentional about the work that I choose and where I put my energy. And then I do that check in with myself to see how it's going.
And I love that, because that's confirmation, one, that I'm on the right track. And two, when I interviewed for my current role, when they asked me about myself, I say the essence of who I am and what I do is to be crowned and to live a crowned life. And crowned was the acronym. And I shared the acronym with them. And a few things happened. When I wasn't performing at a crowned rate, if you will, my manager called me and said, I need you to put your crown back on. And then another thing happened. I asked everyone on the call, what did they want to do next? Like beyond our current role, what is it that they wanted to do? And I wanted to see if they had a growth mindset, because that'll let me know if you're growing, then that means I will grow. If you plan on staying, then my growth is going to be stagnant. And I did not want that. Nowhere. I don't want that. I've been down that road before. But my manager wrote all those things that they said down. So when she picked us for assignments, she go back to that.
You have an excellent manager. Let me tell you, she is like a unicorn. I have had so many terrible managers, and I'm so glad to hear that you felt comfortable to be authentic enough to talk about that, and that your manager did not weaponize it. She remembers, she uses it to nudge you gently, and I appreciate that she actually does listen and then really tries to help her team. So she is special. I do not see that often enough, and I'm so glad for you. That makes such a big difference at work. It really does.
That was one of the interviews where I felt the most authentic. Like I felt like I didn't have to compromise no part of who I was. And I was excited about that. I was really excited. So that just showed me, like hearing you talk about that, it showed me that I am on the right track, which I'm always excited about. And I'm where I should be. Coach Kim, thank you, girl.
Thank you for having me.
I always knew you were going to show up and drop some good jewels.
Thank you. I could do this all day. And I think that's something else that we can think about is, when you talk about being honest and being intentional, what's the thing that you could do all day and never get tired of it? What's the thing that energizes you?
Yes.
So I'm glad to be here to share my experience and my thoughts. Of course, if you want to reach out to me, anyone wants to reach out to me directly, they can do that. It's kim@thebenoviangroup.com. But
you have a special offer we're working on.
I do. I believe so strongly in the self-discovery piece, and I feel like listen, the job market is changing. New jobs are evolving day by day, and so it's so important not to get focused on a particular job that you want, but rather knowing who you are, knowing knowing your talents, your interests, your skills, your values, what's important to you, and how do we package all of those in a way that best serves you in your career, in the world of work. And so I am a big champion, a big fan of a tool called YouScience. And YouScience is basically called brain games, but it's basically a bunch of games that someone can take within about 90 minutes. And those brain games lead us to some really good discoveries about how you approach problems, how you think, and then also gives us language to talk about who we are, helps give us descriptors, helps give us words, phrases to include in the resume during the interview, and just different ways to look at ourselves. So people have talents. People think, oh, I'm just good at this thing, or everyone's good at this thing. No, you might have a special talent.
So much more.
You don't even know it. You don't even know it's a gift. And so I like to use this tool to help my clients really unpack and understand who they are. So we do have an offering, don't we? Yes. I'd like to offer one lucky listener rather, one assessment, a YouScience assessment, plus 2 hours of career coaching. So during the first hour, we'll talk about your YouScience results, and you keep these results. They're good for, you'll have access to them for 10 years. And during the second hour, we'll update your resume. We'll incorporate the aptitudes and the preferences, and use the language and what was uncovered in the resume. So that is the offering.
Y'all, I told y'all, we coming in hot. We got all types of offerings, products, and services to help you reign and rule.
Yes.
You have all types. So our ask is that you email me. The first person that emails me, you will get this offering. Just email me and I'll connect you with Coach Kim and you will get the offering. I promise. I'm also going to put her information in the chat below as well. I want to make sure people have access to you, whether they watch the video in September or beyond. They need to have access to you in all your glory.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This is great. Are you going to ask them to answer a question? Like, what's the 4P paradigm? You're just going to ask
I
them?
want them to tell us. I'm not going to repeat it. I wrote them down in my journal. So I'm not sharing my notes. They better press rewind. But yes, tell us, what are the 4Ps?
You want me to tell? So 4Ps are policy, practice, proof, and perception. And so
she didn't even make y'all rewind. That means she really wants y'all to have this offering. Like, we're excited to partner again this year. Most importantly, we're excited to bring an offering like this to you all. Yes. So please reach out to us so you can make sure you get access to this amazing tool and get connected with Coach Kim. Thank you, Coach Kim.
Thank you. I really appreciate you, Ms. Knox. I will be just standing by, watching you reign and rule as you've been doing. So thank you for shining your light. I appreciate it.
Reign, rule, and rest.
At some point you'll rest. One day soon.